Hello friends, welcome back to JK Shah classes. Today we will be continuing with the revision of the chapter BEPS, Base Erosion and Profit Shifting, the one which we started last time in the part 1. Today in part 2 we will be continuing and dealing with action plan 8 till action plan 15. Last time we finished action plan 1 till 7, Base Erosion and Profit Shifting, initiative of OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, started somewhere in 2015-16 and continuing till today. 8 years are done. Action plan 8 and 10 is titled as transfer pricing outcomes in line with value creation. In line with means in alignment with, at par with, at the same wavelength of value creation. Value creation as in value adding activity. Here there are three types of items covered, or three types of value adding economic activity. Which three? Number one, intangibles, meaning whereby profits are earned because of these three items, or these three are also called as profit driver or profit level indicator, PLI, profit level indicator, or rather in simple language, they are economic activities which generate income. They are responsible for generating income. Like for example, intangible asset, which kind of income will it generate? It will generate income from exploitation of intellectual property rights, IPR, royalty, such kind of income. Risk, and third item is capital and other high risk transaction. These are the three value adding items or value creating items. So one by one, this intangible risk and capital are the high risk transactions, are the core areas of transfer pricing. They are also called as profit level indicator or profit driver. Okay, to put it differently, these three are considered as value creating economic activity, and accordingly allocation of profit to a particular part of the multinational enterprise will very much depend upon in which country is the intangible asset located or where was it generated in a given country, should be linked with the amount or percentage of such value creating economic activity. Now what exactly these people do, what exactly multinational companies do to evade tax? Let's try to understand with the help of one example. X Limited, Y Limited, two companies are there. X Limited is located in country X, Y Limited is located in country Y. Tax rate in country X is 57%, tax rate in country Y is 5%. So that means we can say that X Limited, the country X is a high tax jurisdiction, HTJ, and Y Limited located in country Y is a low tax jurisdiction, LTJ. Now correct profit driver is risk. Suppose any profits are earned because of risk. They are doing such a business combined together. They are doing such a business where the profit driver is risk. Profits are earned because of risk. 98% risk is borne by X Limited in country X, and only 2% risk is borne by Y Limited in country Y. Total profit is $100 million. Out of $100 million, if this is the profit level indicator and this is the percentage of value creating activity risk taking place in these two countries, how much profit should be allocated to these two people? Out of 100 million, $98 million profit should be allocated to X Limited, which should be taxed at 57%, and only $2 million should be allocated to Y Limited. However, what these people do is that they do either of the two things. Number one, as per their contractual agreement. As per contractual agreement, as in our Indian language, we say on paper. On paper, they will show, or in technical language, as per contractual agreement between the two, between X Limited, Y Limited, what they will do is that they will show that risk factor instead of 98%, taking place in country X, only 2% is taking place in country X and 98% is taking place in country Y. They will change it. Now this can very easily be manipulated on paper or in books of accounts, because there are no parameters to decide who's bearing how much risk. Now who will tell us that X Limited is bearing 98% risk and Y Limited is bearing 2%? There is no one to tell us. It is, so this can very easily be manipulated. In such situation, what they will do is that they will show only $2 million profit here, which will be offered to tax at 57%, and $98 million will be shown in country Y. This is one type of manipulation. Another type of manipulation is this way. What they do is that X Limited is located in country X, Y Limited is located in country Y, same parameters, same example. Tax rate is 57% in country X, 5% in country Y. Actual profit driver is intangible. That means profits are on because of intangible. 98% of intangibles are developed in country X and 2% is developed in country Y. Profit is still same, $100 million. But as per contractual agreement between the two, what they do is that as per contractual agreement between X Limited, Y Limited, they manipulate, they show in books of accounts that the correct profit driver is not intangible. Profits are not driven because of intangible. Profits are driven because of capital. Capital invested, and capital invested is hardly 2% in country X and 98% in country Y. In such situation, out of 100 million profit, $98 million should have been allocated to country X, which should have been taxed at 57%, and only $2 million should have been allocated to country Y, which should have been taxed at 5%. Only $2 million should have been taxed at 5%. But what they purposely do is that they keep the total profit intact, $100 million. But out of that, they will show that only $2 million should be taxed in country X at 57% and $98 million should be taxed in country Y. This is how they manipulate. So what they did is that there are two ways of manipulating. In this part, what did we do? Part A and part B, or rather I would say this we discussed second, right? So part B. In part A, what did they do? In part A, they manipulated the correct economic factor is risk. They showed risk only, but the percentage of risk borne is totally drastically changed as per contractual agreement between the two, and that is how they brought down the profit taxable in a high tax jurisdiction from $98 million to $2 million. This is one way that you continue with the, or multinational enterprises will continue with the same profit level indicator, same profit driver, that is risk in this example, but risk borne, who's bearing how much risk, that can be very easily be manipulated in books of accounts or on paper. Instead of saying in books of accounts or on paper, we will say as per contractual agreement between the two. And second part, what did we do? Here, they delinked the profit or de-aligned or de-linked the profit from the correct profit level indicator of intangibles. They linked it with some other less important activity. Here, profits are not driven. For example, this is a business of manufacturing corona vaccine, for which 10,000 crore worth of Indian rupee worth of amount was spent on development of corona vaccine. Development of corona vaccine as in research and development, R&D. 98% expenditure is incurred in country X, where the tax rate is 57%. Correct profit allocated to this country should have been $98 million. However, as per contractual agreement, they showed that intangible is not the correct profit level indicator. Correct profit level indicator is capital. In fact, profits are not linked with capital, but they did it. So on paper, in exam, if you want to write about it, in case you want to describe this situation, what will you write? The profits are delinked from the most important economic activity or most value adding economic activity or significant economic activity, and profits are linked with some less important economic activity, and that is how they have manipulated. Are you clear? So, BEPS concern, two types of things can be done. MNEs were found to be eroding their taxable base or shifting profits in following two ways. That is the BEPS concern. What was the problem and what OECD recommended? Value creating economic activity of multinational enterprise actually takes place in high tax jurisdiction. This is this one. Whatever is B, that is first point. The activity is taking place in high tax jurisdiction. It is taking place in country X, X Limited, country X. But through contractual arrangements or contractual agreement between the associated enterprise of the multinational enterprise, they are shown to be taking place in a low tax jurisdiction, shown to be taking place in country Y, which is the low tax jurisdiction with 5% tax rate. Accordingly, a profit which should have been shown in a high tax jurisdiction is shifted to low tax jurisdiction artificially. This is called misallocation of profits. What is the other way? Second way, I hope you people are clear with this. Profit should be linked with a particular value adding or value creating economic activity, which is the correct profit level indicator or correct profit driver. Correct profit driver is risk, which is taking place in a high tax jurisdiction, or rather this example, intangibles, which is intangible but are delinked from the correct economic activity. Correct economic activity is intangible, it is delinked from that, disconnected from that, and it is linked to or connected with or attributed to some other unimportant factor which is taking place in low tax jurisdiction. Which unimportant factor? It is linked with capital. Thus, profits are shifted from high tax jurisdiction to low tax jurisdiction by linking it with some less important economic activity. Okay, then the example which I gave you, same example I have given here also, which is not needed. What is OECD recommending? How to tackle this? So OECD says that nothing much can be done. It is just the tax officer will have to be more vigilant. While doing assessment of these people, tax officer will have to be of the given country, especially the high tax jurisdiction. He will have to be very careful about it. He will have to see whether actual nature of transaction will have to be determined for pricing. So actual nature, in case if the given income is coming from royalty, it is royalty income, then it is not dependent on capital. Capital should not be the correct profit level indicator. Correct profit level indicator should be intangible. So assessing officer or the tax officer will have to be little vigilant. He will have to focus and understand what is the nature of transaction in case where economic substance differs from its form. Then pricing method should ensure that the profits are allocated to the most important economic activity, especially when applying profit split method. Profit split method is the one where goods are passed on by A limited to B limited, B limited to C limited. There are multiple people in the chain, value chain industry, where product passes through various people and everyone does some value addition. In such situation, the profit should be linked with the most value adding economic activity. This will ensure that transfer pricing outcomes are aligned with the value creation or value addition. Idea is to ensure that the transfer pricing outcomes, whatever is the ALP or whatever is the income determined based on ALP, should be linked with the most value creating or value adding item. Okay, then contractual relations between the parties to be analyzed in combination with actual conduct. Actual conduct as in what? This is the language which is used by OECD people. They use some French language or German language, then they translate everything into English. So while translating, they end up using this kind of language. What they want to say is that whatever manipulations that have taken place because of contractual allocation of profit. Now that should be analyzed in combination with actual conduct. Actual conduct as in if it is shown on paper as per contractual agreement that the correct profit level indicator is risk. Risk is borne 98% by Y limited. That is what is shown as per contractual agreement. Then check whether as per actual conduct, whether Y limited has the risk bearing capacity or not. Risk bearing capacity as in Y limited has the decision making authority or not. If the person who is bearing 98% risk but does not have decision making authority, decisions are taken by some other person, then that is not acceptable. Then that point should trigger in AO's mind. Secondly, the person who is bearing the risk as per contractual agreement, whether he has a financial capacity to bear the risk or not. Say for example, in our given transaction, risk involved is to the tune of 5,000 crore worth of Indian rupees. The risk amount could go up to 5,000 crore rupees. But the person who is bearing 98% risk, that person Y Limited's net worth of Y Limited is 5 lakh rupees in terms of Indian rupee. Then person having a net worth of 5 lakh rupees cannot have the capacity, that is financial capacity, to bear the risk of 5,000 crore rupees. So that is to be analyzed. That is what we say, contractual relations between them or contractual agreements between them should be analyzed having regard to actual conduct. So manipulations in the ALP are possible by way of contractual allocation of functions, assets and risk between the parties. We call it as FAR analysis, functions, assets and risk analysis. Such manipulations will give rise to outcomes which do not correspond to the value created by economic activity performed. So contractual relations between the parties to be analyzed in combination with conduct of the parties. Risk and returns to be allocated to the party exercising the actual control or exercising the decision making authority and having financial capacity to assume risk. Okay. Now thereafter OECD has also provided for some guidance on low value adding intra-group services. What is this? Low value adding intra-group. Low value adding are generally those services which are back office services which do not create any value, addition. Like for example, out of A Limited, B Limited, C Limited, D Limited, E Limited, so many associated enterprises, one of them is providing low value adding services, providing billing service, which does not create any value addition to the asset, or one of them is doing packaging work, or one of them is doing quality checking work, quality testing work. Then in such situation, that quality testing, for example, Apple iPhones are manufactured in China. Somebody in India does only billing work. Billing work does not add up to the value of the iPhone. iPhone cannot start charging 5,000 rupee per phone extra just because billing is done by somebody in India, a prestigious country. Or somebody does quality testing in India, because of that iPhone price will not be impacted. So low value adding services, here how manipulations were taking place, what these people used to do, they would show on paper that X Limited, Y Limited, main activity is the manufacturing activity. Manufacturing is mainly taking or is 100% taking place in country X with 57% tax rate, nothing taking place in country Y. But what is happening is some low value adding services are provided by 100% provided by Y Limited from country Y. So what they do on paper is that they link the profits with this low value adding services. Out of total profit, 100% profit should ideally go to country X because of core activity taking place in country X. Negligible service charge can be paid by X Limited to Y Limited, whatever are the service charges, say 50 rupee per phone if it is Apple. Instead of that, what they do is that profit is supposedly $100 million. $100 million profit they split between these two in 50-50% ratio. $50 million allocated to X Limited, $50 million allocated to Y Limited. Just because Y Limited is providing some service, so AO, the tax officer, will have to analyze that whether the services provided by Y Limited are creating any value addition or not. So low value adding intra-group services, OECD has provided guidance that how much profit should be allocated to such enterprise should be based on cost incurred. So if the cost incurred in providing such low value adding services, cost incurred by Y Limited is supposedly, hypothetically it is just how much should I take? Let's say I am taking $10,000 or $1 lakh. $1 lakh, then OECD recommends 5% markup, that cost plus markup. Out of total profit, whatever is a profit, the total amount of profit allocated to these people should be just $5,000. 5% of the cost incurred by them. They do not deserve more than this. So low value adding intra-group services basically means those services which is supportive in nature. Back office services is not the part of the core business of the M&E, not requiring valuable intangibles, not even creating valuable intangibles. Once our institute asked for an MCQ on left hand side they had given low value adding intra-group services and right hand side they had given these two. Not requiring valuable intangibles, not creating valuable intangibles. So you will have to remember all these things. Not even involving significant risk. So person who does billing activity is not actually bearing any kind of risk at all. His business is totally risk free. A person who does quality testing work. OECD has provided a list of such services which are generally back office services. OECD has suggested one elective approach, there is optional simplified approach to determine ALP of charges for such low value adding intergroup services. Elective approach, so in which India also adopted in safe harbor rule, OECD recommended that elective approach as an option shall be given to these people, multinational enterprises, that in case you want us to determine the profit, then your profit figure will not be accepted, profit will be a particular percentage of the cost incurred for low value adding group services. OECD has suggested 5% markup and we adopted 5% markup, whereby ALP of such services will be cost incurred for such low value adding services plus 5% of such cost as a reasonable profit margin. OECD also suggested to keep a threshold limit beyond which If the cost incurred for such services is beyond particular amount, then this elective approach will not be, or simplified approach will be denied. Like OECD has recommended an amount approximately 10 crore. India adopted exactly 10 crore amount. This is totally unimportant, but our institute is more interested in asking questions on unimportant stuff from this chapter. Only MCQ expected. Indian tax regime. India has not incorporated any specific provision, but the concept of low value adding intergroup service has been introduced by CBDT in Safe Harbor Rules (SHR), which we discussed in transfer pricing chapter. Safe Harbor Rules were introduced in India in AY 15-16, 16-17, 17-18, and 17-18 they were replaced by some new rules, new Safe Harbor Rules in AY 17-18 only. So AY 17-18 option was given to people that either you continue with the old Safe Harbor Rule or go for new Safe Harbor Rule. The new Safe Harbor Rules were valid for 3 years, AY 17-18, 18-19, 19-20, and then due to Corona they were extended by 1 more year, AY 2021, and thereafter CBDT has totally forgotten about it. Maybe Safe Harbor Rules are not popular in India. Safe Harbor Rule is an elective approach, optional approach, whereby you as an assessee can approach department and can opt for Safe Harbor Rules, whereby the ALP will be computed based on certain parameters, based on certain pre-decided parameters. If you are disclosing that much of profit, then this chapter will not be applied for each and every isolated individual transaction. Threshold limit of 10 crore is also incorporated. We also incorporated 5% markup. We incorporated 10 crore threshold limit, above which SHR will not be applied on low value adding intergroup services. 8, 9, 10 are not very important from exam perspective, but still institute is asking question. Real life they are very important. These are the core areas where manipulations are possible, easily possible, and without knowledge of department. Action plan 11, measuring and monitoring of BEPS. BEPS, base erosion profit shifting, monitoring. Monitoring is okay, but measuring. Measuring basically means measurement, in a sense how much is the impact of government revenue loss because of BEPS. So it says that this is happening, this BEPS is happening, and it is frequently happening, it is increasing also, but it is not possible to measure the exact impact because of certain data limitations. What are the data limitations? So OECD says that profit shifting through transfer mispricing or strategic location of intangible and debt and treaty abuse, it is occurring, BEPS is occurring, it is increasing, it is significant, it is likely to increase, creates adverse economic distortion. All these things are okay. But what is the problem? Why we are not able to measure? So if somebody wants to find out because of BEPS, what is the total revenue loss to various governments? What is it? Is it $5 trillion, $10 trillion every year? Not possible because of serious data limitation. Measuring scale of BEPS is a challenging due to complexities of BEPS and serious data limitation. So complexities cannot be handled. We have no solution, but at least the data limitation we can try to overcome. What kind of data limitations? So it is happening, limitations of currently available data, that is currently available data is not comprehensive across all the countries and across all companies. There are 196 countries in the world. Out of them, only 60 countries have participated with OECD. Only 60 countries are collecting data of their companies which are having multinational presence. 60 countries are collecting information and have agreed to share that information with other people through country by country report, etc. Other countries are not cooperating. In such situation, I will share data with you, but you don't share data with me, then the purpose or the goal cannot be achieved. It has to be from both the sides. Available data does not include taxes paid, that is okay. So data are available with regards to profit, but how much tax is paid in each country, that many countries are not collecting that data. So that needs to be made mandatory. Difficulty to segregate, this is the most important point, difficulty to segregate the effects of BEPS from the effects arising because of other economic factor and effects arising due to government tax policy. For example, I was manufacturing plastic bags in India less than 20 micron. Government of India bans that product, that plastic bags cannot be manufactured. I shifted to China or I shifted to Bangladesh, started manufacturing plastic bags in Bangladesh. Cheap labor. So my intention is not to avoid tax. I'm not going to Bangladesh, not setting up my business in Bangladesh or shifting my business because of BEPS. I'm doing it because of other government factors, like government banned the manufacturing of gutka, in such situation I was compelled to go to some other country. For another example, Apple incorporation shifting from China to India due to labor unrest in China. In between there were labor unrest problems in China few years back. Now the things are resolved. But in such situation, Apple is shifting from China to India not for saving tax, not for avoiding tax. BEPS action plan, what is OECD recommending? It says it recommends mainly two things: improving availability of data. So countries should make mandatory to disclose more and more data to the people who are resident or the multinational groups having parent entity resident in their country. Then those countries should make data disclosure more frequent and more accurate. Detailed information should be demanded, and improving data analysis tool. Some countries collect the data are available with them, but they don't have a good quality artificial intelligence based software. They are not able to analyze the data, or are analyzing data but taking too much time. Maybe because of staff shortage, or maybe because of sophisticated softwares are not available. Data received today, they analyze it after 2-3 years down the line. After 2-3 years, it will be useless to analyze the data and share that information with other countries. Some information needed for measurement and monitoring of BEPS is already collected by tax administrator, but are either not analyzed by themselves or are not made available for analysis. This creates a severe amount of constraint. OECD also recommended on one hand that data sharing should be there, but at the same time, it is needed to protect the confidentiality and privacy of the taxpayer. Action Plan 11 further recommends introduction of strong anti-avoidance rules to reduce profit shifting. That is okay. India has done nothing concrete in this regard because India need not do anything. Our data analysis is extremely powerful. In fact, other countries are purchasing software from us. They place contract with us to develop software. India is kind of number one. India is a software hub for the world. Action Plan 12, disclosure of aggressive tax planning arrangement. Here, OECD recommends that in case if disclosure of tax planning strategies are made mandatory, that anybody who plans to enter into aggressive tax planning arrangement whereby assessee planning to take great amount of advantage of the various schemes which are officially available, then that needs to be reported compulsorily. Now, where to report, where not to report, what is to be done, by what time the information to be reported, where to report, in IT return or by separate form, what should be the punishment for not reporting or failure to report, everything OECD says those countries who are interested in making disclosure mandatory, come to us, we will provide guidance for that. Right now in action plan, OECD simply says because of this, the governments are not able to take corrective action, they are not able to take proactive action. As in, if as a tax administrator, if you come to know certain things in advance by way of mandatory disclosure on the part of assessee, you as a tax administrator, you will come to know about certain things in advance. Because of advanced information, advanced warning, you will be able to decide your audit risk. You will be able to plan out your strategy. You will be able to identify those people who are going to take advantage. There is a major second hidden advantage of mandatory disclosure according to OECD is the deterrence. Deterrence means fear of getting caught. Fear of getting caught. Because of that, many people will avoid doing it because of fear of being caught. At least 90% people will stop doing it. For example, I was teaching in some coaching class where each and every classroom had 2 CCTV camera. One CCTV camera here, one CCTV camera here. And because of that, a high level of discipline was maintained in the class, in each and every class, a very high level of discipline. Finally, for some work, I casually happened to speak to the main in charge. I just asked him, sir, can I have a look at the CCTV clip or clipping of one of the days I misplaced my pen, expensive pen I had lost somewhere. So I was just wanted to see whether I forgot in the class or something. Then the owner of coaching class told me that these are toy cameras. These are not real cameras. They don't have any connectivity, nothing recorded, costing 250 rupees each camera, toy camera, only for show purpose. Okay, so in such situation, there was a deterrence. In the sense, students became disciplined because of fear of being caught. Same thing here also, if disclosure requirements are made mandatory, then at least 90% people will stop doing wrong things which they were planning to do. 90% people will stop. 10% people who are hardcore criminals, they will continue doing it anyhow, whether cameras are there or not, or whether disclosure requirements are there or not. So OECD says that major challenge faced by tax authorities world over is a lack of timely information, comprehensive, that is complete information, and the relevant information. Sometimes irrelevant information is received. Sometimes information is not complete, that is not comprehensive, that also does not serve the purpose, and most of the times information is not timely. Information on tax planning strategies. Timely access to such information would facilitate tax authorities to quickly respond to the tax risk. So OECD says introduction of mandatory disclosure rule. Action Plan 12 is not a minimum standard. So OECD says this is not mandatory. Those countries who wish to do it, those countries who wish to make it mandatory, you come to us, we will provide you guidance. Countries are free to decide whether they want to introduce mandatory disclosure regime or not. Okay, like in our country, in India, we have Black Money Act, which compels assessee to disclose assets outside India, bank account outside India. Certain things have to be disclosed in IT return. In IT return, there is a separate schedule of which is called Schedule FLA, Foreign Liability and Assets, where these items are to be disclosed. Okay, then those people in India having individuals having net income exceeding 50 lakhs, they also have to make a disclosure of their personal assets, which some of you or most of you would be aware of, those who have an experience of filing IT return. What is the purpose? What will government do by making me disclose my personal assets? If just because my income is more than 50 lakh, is nothing but there is a fear factor created in the minds of people that government will create a fear factor that okay, we are watching you, our eyes are on you. The main object of mandatory disclosure is to increase transparency. That is nonsense. It is increase transparency, that is to convince taxpayer that let's have a transparency. Idea is to keep a watch. By providing tax administration with early information regarding potentially aggressive or abusive tax planning schemes, and to identify promoters and users of such scheme. Another hidden advantage is a deterrence, that means discouraging something through fear of its consequences, which I already explained you, whereby taxpayers will refrain or avoid themselves from entering into such schemes if they are to be mandatorily disclosed. OECD also recommended that whichever country plans to do it will have to ensure that these factors are or these features are or these factors are taken into account. Number one, when to disclose information, what information to be disclosed, who reports to whom, and what are the consequences of non-reporting. Clarity should be maintained as to what information is to be disclosed, where to disclose in the IT return or by way of separate form, timeline, deadline, last date, and the punishment. India has not adopted any mandatory disclosure rule as of now, but certain things are required to be disclosed in the IT return which are not regarding aggressive tax planning. Here we are talking about in Action Plan 12, we are talking about disclosure of aggressive tax planning. And in IT return, we have a disclosure with regards to assets outside India and personal assets in India exceeding, if the income exceeds 50 lakh. That is on a different footing. Now, Action Plan 13, re-examine transfer pricing documentation. This is minimum standard. This is nothing but what we already discussed in transfer pricing chapter. Transfer pricing documentation. So, prior to AY 16-17, ever since this BEPS was introduced in India, prior to that, in transfer pricing chapter, as per section 92D, subsection 1, clause 1, those who have entered into international transaction, they were required to maintain data document information, DDI, as given in Rule 10D. Which documents were required to be maintained? Like international industry report, your industry report, list of your associated enterprises, how much they are holding in you, how much you are holding in them, what is their business activity, what is their name, address, what are they doing, what is your business activity, did you have any transaction during the year with associated enterprise, did you sell them anything, did you purchase anything from them, etc. Associate and India specific information, transaction specific information, and industry report. Now, according to OECD, certain documents should be made mandatory, whereby two things were introduced, section 92D subsection 1 clause 2. Existing data documents information were converted into clause 1 to section 92D1. A new concept was introduced, furnishing of master file local file, and also government introduced section 286 about country by country report, CBCR, country by country report. What is it? We know pretty well. Who furnishes to whom, that also we know pretty well. So, two concepts were introduced, two types of document. Master file local file form 3 CEAA Part A is master file, Part B is local file. These documents were made mandatory submission. Master file, local file to be submitted along with IT return or on or before the due date of filing IT return. On or before IT return due date given in section 139(1). And CBCR to be furnished within 12 months from the end of the accounting period. So accounting period ends on 31st March 2025, then this is to be furnished by 31st March 2026. Otherwise penalty, first 1 month of default 5,000 per day, and in case delay or the default exceeds 1 month, then 15,000 per day. And severe punishments or severe penalties are introduced. Okay. And for master file, local file not furnished, then penalty is 5 lakh rupees flat straight away. So re-examine as in revisit. So documentation concept was already there, we did have, and all the countries had. All countries had this. Is just that OECD recommended introduction of few more documents. What kind of documents are they? So understand, supposingly I am in Maharashtra, this is India. In India, the police department or law and order is a subject of state government. Central government is not responsible, state government is responsible. So this is Maharashtra for example, and this is some other state, this is Gujarat, Maharashtra. Imagine Gujarat police is different, Gujarat state is different, Maharashtra police is different, Maharashtra state is different. Somebody, Mr. X, commits a crime in Maharashtra and he runs away to Gujarat. Do you think that he has escaped? Now nothing can be done, nobody can catch him. He can be caught easily. How? Gujarat police will arrest him and remand him back to Maharashtra police. Gujarat police, Maharashtra police will cooperate with each other, will coordinate with each other. This coordination is possible only if they have some agreement with each other and they are ready to share information with each other, they are ready to exchange information with each other. So that it should not so happen that a criminal of one state takes a shelter in another state, that should not happen. He should not be able to escape easily. That's why there should be coordination. Same thing expected by OECD at country level, at international level, that if somebody, which is the company from Switzerland, comes to India and evades tax, which is very common practice. Swiss companies, many of them, they evade taxes in India or avoid taxes by entering into this transfer pricing agreement. Okay, hypothetically, it's just an example. Then in such situation, Swiss government and Indian government will have to coordinate with each other. Some company which is evading taxes in Switzerland and comes to India, or vice versa, Swiss company comes to India, does not pay tax in India, they shift profit from India to Switzerland or from Switzerland to India, vice versa. Then in such situation, it's possible to catch such people only if we have complete information about them. That how much is their income disclosed in Switzerland, how much is the tax paid in Switzerland, how much is the income disclosed in India, how much is the tax paid in India, which is practically possible only when government to government level there is a coordination by way of exchange of documents. What documents? So Indian government, for example, it is TCS group. TCS India is a parent company. TCS India will submit CBCR, country by country report, whereby TCS, the parent company or parent entity of the whole group, will furnish country by country report giving details of all its entities world over. Whether in India or Switzerland, everywhere, world over, country by country. For each country individually, details will be submitted with the Indian government. Indian government will exchange it with the Swiss government, and Swiss government will have TCS Switzerland, if at all. TCS Switzerland would furnish master file, local file to Swiss government, and Swiss government will receive CBCR from Indian government and master file, local file from TCS Switzerland, and which they will match with each other and they will try to find out whether data are matching or not. Same thing, US company, Coca-Cola, or let's say even Pepsi, they come to India. Pepsi group will furnish CBCR to whom? Pepsi group will furnish to US government. US government CBCR, US government will share it with us, and in India, Pepsi India will furnish master file, local file with Indian government. Data contained in CBCR from parent entity will be matched with the information given by Pepsi India through master file, local file. If there is mismatch, they can be caught. Okay, so there is nothing great here. India has already adopted it, but this is minimum standard. That's why you have to study this. Submission of transfer pricing related documents. or reports is mandatory in all countries. It was already mandatory, but OECD required some further documents. But these documents would contain only entity specific or country specific information, limited information, would not contain information or details of the whole M&E group at worldwide level. Cross verification of these documents was not possible by any country, by tax administrators of any country. So OECD recommended 3 layers of document or 3 types of document, 3-tier document: master file, local file, country by country report. Then whatever we discuss in transfer pricing chapter about BEPS will furnish to US government, and if the group where the parent entity is resident in India, TCS India, then they will furnish the CBCR in India. Okay, so BEPS in USA will submit CBCR to tax authority of USA, and they will share with us, they will share one copy with India through automatic exchange of information agreement. On the other hand, TCS India will have to furnish in form 3 CEAD with Indian government. Indian government will discharge one copy, or Indian government will share it with different governments, US, Russia, Japan, China, wherever TCS is present. However, in India, this requirement arises. Time limit is 12 months from the end of the accounting period, and only if group revenue exceeds last year's revenue exceeds of last year exceeds rupees 5,500 crore, then only this requirement arises. Then what are the contents of master file? Who furnishes to whom? So this is to be submitted at local level. This is to be master file, local file to be submitted by each and every constituent entity. BEPS USA will also submit. In addition to CBCR, BEPS India will also submit. BEPS India will submit to Indian tax administrator. BEPS USA will submit to US tax administrator, to be delivered by each constituent entity of the MLE to the local tax administrator of the country in which given entity operates. Same thing for local file, to be delivered to MNE directly to the local tax administrator. Country by country report is to be furnished not by each and every constituent entity of the group. It is to be delivered only by parent entity. In place of parent entity, they can delegate some other entity in some other country called as alternate reporting entity. We already detailed it in detail in a chapter called miscellaneous provisions, where this section 286 falls. To be furnished by parent entity of the MNE in the country of his residence, wherever it is resident of, which will be shared with other jurisdiction through automatic exchange of information. India, what India has done, this is minimum standard, so India had to follow. We already had 92D subsection 1, 92D subsection 1 clause 1. We introduced clause 2 for master file, local file. 3 CEAA form number, part A for master file, part B for local file. 5 lakh rupee penalty for not furnished by the due date of filing IT return. Then section 286 CBCR, only if consolidated group revenue of last year exceeds 5,500 crore, and it is to be submitted to Joint Commissioner of Income Tax designated by DGIT risk assessment in form 3 CEAD. Form numbers not to be remembered, but penalty provision to be remembered: 5,000 per day for up to first 1 month of delay, thereafter 15,000 per day, provided group revenue last year exceeded 5,500 crore. CBDT also issued a notification clarifying, in case if the group revenue is in foreign currency, then applying which currency conversion rate to be applied for converting it into Indian currency. Action plan 14, making dispute resolution more effective. This takes us to the previous chapter, Model Tax Convention, Article 25, if you recollect. Whenever there is a dispute or disagreement with regards to application of treaty or interpretation of treaty between two countries, they can resolve the issue by mutual agreement procedure. And the second stage of mutual agreement procedure means mutually two countries, tax representatives or the competent authorities of two countries will meet each other and they will mutually come to some resolution. Second stage of mutual agreement procedure is referring the matter for arbitration. So arbitration is again a part of mutual agreement procedure only. So mutual agreement, who can apply? So answer: representatives of two countries, tax representative. Competent authority, they themselves can also contact each other in case they themselves have the dispute or disagreement with regards to interpretation or application of treaty. Alternatively, person who is subjected to treaty, say I am a resident of India, I go to UK and earn income, then I am subjected to Indo-UK treaty. I am subjected to treaty. when can I raise my grievance, when can I put up my case, or when can I present my case? I can present my case in case where I am of the opinion that action taken by either of the countries is not in accordance with the agreement, or action taken by either of the country will result into taxation not in accordance with the provisions of the treaty, then I can raise my grievance. In Model Tax Convention chapter, while revising it, we had discussed it. In case you have not seen my video on Model Tax Convention, please refer to it, have a look at it. It's already done. The person under UN Model Convention has to contact the competent authority of the country of which he is resident, SOR. But as per OECD Model Convention, he can contact, or he can put up his case, or he can present his case to tax authorities of either of the country or both the countries. Any which ways, then MAP happens. Now, according to this Action Plan 14, OECD says that many countries have not informed their taxpayers that this facility is available. That in case the person subjected to treaty is affected by the decision or affected by the action of the other country, then what remedies are available to him, he should be knowing about it. Many countries including India had not maintained transparency under preceding government prior to AY 1516. I would not name anybody, but preceding governments never informed we Indian people that this is a facility available. So people were only under an impression that if I as a resident of India go to UK and UK government does wrong with me, applies treaty and or does some action, takes action which is not in accordance with treaty, then earlier people used to believe that only remedy available is to file appeal as per the taxation law of UK. No other remedy available. That is what people used to believe. But there is this MAP remedy available. I can communicate with the tax authority in India, competent authority, finance ministry in India, that please look into the matter. UK tax authorities are doing wrong thing with me. Okay. So OECD says that make it better, dispute resolution system, make it more effective, inform your residents about it. There should be a separate form available to raise the grievance. So in India, there was no form available, there was no procedure, there were no rules, there was no provision in the act, nothing was there. People were not aware of it also. Even government officers, even finance ministry officers, they were also not aware of it. CBDT members were also not aware of it. Hardly anybody would be aware of it. Thanks to OECD, because of this project, all governments including Indian governments became proactive and started introducing. India introduced Rule 44G, which is not there in our syllabus, and Rule 44H, two rules, and India introduced one form also, form number 34F, for raising grievance. If UK government does wrong with me, I can raise grievance in form 34F with Indian tax authorities, of course finance ministry, and get it resolved. This will maintain transparency, and plus OECD recommended one more thing, that all governments to inform their residents about facility available, plus there should be somebody to keep a watch whether given country is providing dispute resolution mechanism or doing it effectively or not. For that, who will keep a watch? Who will keep a watch? Can Pakistan keep a watch on India? So in such situation, there cannot be one single country which may be acceptable as a world leader. So it was decided that there will be peer review mechanism. Peer review, peer means person of your caliber, your age group, your caliber will keep a watch on you, will observe your work and do reporting to somebody. You keep a watch on somebody else and you do the reporting for that person. That person will do the reporting of third person will do the reporting of fourth person by reviewing the work. So how many complaints are received? Out of that, how many complaints are resolved? How many complaints are still unresolved? How much is the average time taken to resolve the issue? Here, earlier, those people who are aware of this MAP and had lodged the complaint, there was no timely resolution. The matter is still hanging for 10-15 years. For 10 years, 15 years, there is no resolution. It's going on and on. So OECD fired these people that there should be quickly timely resolution. OECD does not say take the decision within 10-15 days. OECD says you take your time, but 10-15 years is too long period. Do it within some reasonable timeline. There is no timeline is not suggested by OECD. Timeline cannot be framed, but do it at the reasonable possible time. BEPS concern, many countries do not implement tax treaties in a proper consistent manner, especially with regards to dispute resolution mechanism. Resolution of disputes through MAP is not done in an effective and a timely manner. not done effectively and not done in a timely manner. Most important is the timely manner. Okay, so OECD recommended that we will not keep a watch, we will set up one committee called Forum for Tax Administration, Forum for Tax Administration, FTA, and India is a part of this FTA, whereby FTA will be a group created whereby one country will do peer review of another country, second country will do peer review of third country, and so on, and everyone whosoever has done peer review mechanism, anyone has done peer review, they will report to FTA. No action will be taken, action will not be taken. What if Pakistan takes 25 years to resolve? No action can be taken against Pakistan. Who will take action against Pakistan? What to do? So there is no punishment, there is no punitive action taken against such country, but because of peer pressure that everyone is doing it smoothly, efficiently, we are the only one left out, we are lagging behind, then that country will be compelled to improve. That is the overall idea. Okay, many countries do not provide clarity to their residents like the way India never provided under Congress era with regards to procedure for MAP, like whom to apply, form number in which to apply, fee structure if any, whether to apply to at local level, Delhi, to contact Nirmala Sitharaman or to contact CBDT or where. BEPS Action Plan, OECD's recommendation in Action Plan 14, which is a minimum standard, aim to achieve the following objective. Treaty obligations relating to MAP should be fully implemented in good faith. Good faith as in no punitive action. Countries, they themselves have to understand and realize their own responsibility. If they have not been doing it so far, then they need to introspect themselves and start doing it now. MAP cases are to be resolved in a timely manner. This is the most important factor or most important suggestion of OECD. Taxpayers can exercise MAP whenever eligible. So issue separate form number and the procedure, which Indian government did. OECD's final report advocates setting up a separate monitoring body. Now who will monitor? Whether India is doing it properly or not, Pakistan is doing it or not. So one separate monitoring body was to be set up called Forum for Tax Administration, FTA, as a minimum standard, which will be complemented by a set of best practices. Best practices are minimum standard means mandatory requirement, mandatory action plan, and best practice means extra suggestions by OECD which are not mandatory. Various states will report their MAP statistics to FTA and will have their MAP performances monitored by FTA. But primarily FTA will be the monitoring body. Whatever you have done, your MAP performances means how many complaints did you receive, how many you resolved, how many are unresolved at the year ending, how much time you took on an average for each complaint, each grievance. Like in our institute, there is a disciplinary committee. So disciplinary committee on institute's website, they put it up, how many complaints were received against chartered accountants. Out of them, in how many complaints the action was taken and how many complaints action was not taken, how many complaints were resolved by the year ending, how many complaints were not resolved, etc. In addition to this, there will be peer review mechanism whereby one country will do review of other country in the area of same people, in the area of exchange of information to ensure transparency. Indian tax regime not applicable. India has been a part of this FTA from the beginning and India is cooperating with other people. Here, now still everything is under work in progress. Still FTA is set up but peer review has not yet started. Last is Action Plan 15, Developing Multilateral Instrument, MLI. This is something off the track. Understand, multilateral instrument. When the one party is involved, it is called unilateral, but agreement cannot be by a single person. In order to enter into agreement, there has to be minimum 2 people involved. Agreement can be bilateral, tripartite, or if 3 or more than 3 parties are involved, we call it as multilateral. Multilateral instrument, we call it as BEPS, MLI. What is the concept? It's a beautiful concept introduced. So if you recollect, in the previous part of this video, of this BEPS chapter revision, we had discussed in most of the action plans, OECD has recommended making changes in the domestic law as well as making appropriate changes, corresponding changes in the treaty. Now, there are 196 countries in the world. India has treaty with 98 countries, DTAA, resulting into 98 DTAAs. But on an average, each country has got 60 plus agreements with different 60 countries on an average. India is on a slightly higher side, but 60 agreements with each country. Each country has agreement with 60 countries. That means each country has 60 agreements into so many countries. Imagine if every country is compelled as a minimum standard to make a small change also in the preamble of DTAA or anywhere, one small change. So what to do? This results into around more than 3000 DTAAs. All 3000 DTAAs will have to be amended. Large number of agreements will have to be amended, and agreements cannot be amended by making a phone call or just signing it. The finance ministers of both the countries will have to meet in a third country. Whole team will be sent, say India and Mauritius, they will meet at Hong Kong. So everyone travels from Mauritius to Hong Kong, India to Hong Kong. Whole team goes. Hotel, boarding, lodging expenditure, transportation expenditure. It involves so much of time, money, energy. With 98 countries, supposing it involves a cost of 1 crore rupees for each country for amending each DTAA. 1 crore rupees supposingly, or let's say 50 lakh rupees. Then around 50 crore rupees will be incurred. 50 crore rupees will have to be incurred, and plus lot of time, money, energy, everything will be wasted. So what to do? Shortcut way was developed by OECD. Fiscal Committee of OECD recommended this in 2015, and OECD adopted it as an action plan 15. What OECD did? OECD says at local level what happens? Suppose you have a partnership deed. Partnership deed. How many partnerships would be there in the country? Say in the whole country there are more than 60 lakh partnerships, resulting into more than 60 lakh deeds. Imagine if 60 lakh deeds are to be amended for making small change. How much time will it take? How many stamp papers of 500 rupee would be needed? How many papers will have to be typed out? Paper will be wasted. So if you recollect, we have an act called Indian Partnership Act 1932. Partnership Act 1932. So if government wants everyone to make some change, so rather than asking everyone, rather than changing all 60 lakh deeds, what to do? Make a small amendment in this Partnership Act and make that this amendment will be applicable to all partnership deeds. Automatically that one single change will be effective, one single change will become applicable to all 60 lakh deeds. Okay, so rather than, there is a very old proverb that rather than carpeting the whole road, it will be advisable that you better wear a footwear. You wear shoes and then walk, rather than carpeting the whole approach road. Same thing here. So what OECD did? OECD says we are coming out with this instrument, MLI, BEPS MLI, which will have 39 clauses. All 39 are not mandatory, optional. So step number 1, what to do? So if any country is interested, first you understand how the system works and some terminology like compatibility clause, etc. So any country which is interested will have to sign. So India interested, India will have to sign BEPS MLI. Step number 1. And then out of 39 clauses, if India wants to amend its, out of 98 DTAAs, if India wants to amend 72 DTAA, 72, remaining 26 India does not want to. The concept is totally optional. Signing BEPS MLI means you are giving your primary acceptance that okay, this concept is beautiful, we liked it, we are interested. By signing BEPS MLI, there is no obligation created on any party. You're not doing anything, it's just a basic requirement. Okay, then second condition. Second condition, if India is interested in amending 72 DTAA, India will have to give a list of DTAAs which India wants to be subjected to, or being made applicable to BEPS MLI. India will have to give. Let's say India gave 72 copies, 72 agreements. These agreements will be called as covered tax agreements. Covered tax agreements, which is CTA. This is also not enough. Plus, India will have to select the given clause. Out of 39 clauses, India will have to select the relevant clause, whichever it wants, whichever clause India wants out of 39 clauses to be made applicable to given DTAA. It is not necessary that India has to select the same clause number for each and every DTAA. Out of 72 agreements which India forwarded to OECD. India will have to submit it to OECD. It is called depository, deposit with OECD, along with deposit note, Okay, now India can select different clauses for different agreement. With India Mauritius, India selected clause number 1, 3, 1, 3 and 5. With another country, India selected 1, 7 and 9. This is called opting in. This is called exercising the opt-in feature. Opt-in, India has opted in for a particular clause. Out of 39 clauses, India has opted in for the particular clause of BEPS MLI for Indo-Mauritius DTAA. Another DTAA, India will have to again make a choice, again select. Okay, and then there is something called compatibility test, compatibility condition or compatibility test, meaning thereby whatever condition India is fulfilling, 3 condition, same 3 condition should have been fulfilled by that other country also. For example, India wants to amend its treaty of which treaty? Indo-Mauritius treaty. Then India also has to be signatory to BEPS MLI. Mauritius also has to be signatory to BEPS MLI. India also has to submit Indo-Mauritius DTAA copy. India will have to deposit. Mauritius will also have to deposit. Only India submits copy, that is not enough. Mauritius also has to submit. And ultimate, whatever clauses are selected by India by opting in, same clauses should have been opted in by Mauritius also. If different clauses are opted, then whatever common clauses are opted in, only those clauses of BEPS MLI will be applicable. Other clauses will not apply. For example, in Indo-Mauritius Treaty DTAA, India and Mauritius, India selected or India opted in for clause number 1, 2, 7, 9, 15, 37. Mauritius opted for clause 1, clause 2, clause 8, clause 12, clause 19, clause 38. Then whatever is commonly opted in will be called as meeting with compatibility test. Those clauses will be deemed to be meeting the compatibility test which are commonly selected by both of them. 1, 2, that's it. Only 1 and 2 are common between both of them. Remaining clauses will not be applied because only either of the countries have opted in. So all the 3 conditions will be subject to compatibility test. Both the countries have to do this. What is the effect? What is the effect? If as an effect, India will not have to incur expenditure, Mauritius also will not have to incur expenditure. Without incurring expenditure or without meeting each other, by submitting it to OECD, they will get so and so clause applicable to the treaty. According to this action plan, treaty will not be modified, treaty will remain intact. The way here, partnership deed, 60 lakh partnership deeds will not be changed, no changes will be made, but those 60 lakh partnership deed will be subject to amendment, subject to insertion of the extra clause, in that partnership act. Right? So same way here, these 2 clauses will become applicable. But some of you might feel that expenses are required, expenses have to be incurred for sending DTAA copy to OECD. Answer, there will be one-time expenditure. No, if I am submitting 72 agreements I am sending to OECD, depositing with them, then it's a one-time expenditure. Rather than incurring expenditure 72 times with 72 different countries, this involves one-time expenditure. Okay, and this becomes easier also, a lot of time saving, beneficial. Okay, so there are about 196 countries in the world. Most countries have DTAA with 60 plus countries, resulting into 3000 plus treaties globally. India has signed DTAA with 98 countries. Even if all countries agree to make a small change also in all their DTAA, it will be resulting into large number of treaties to be amended, which will be very time consuming and will involve incurring of huge expenditure. So OECD developed this multilateral instrument. Multilateral, why we call it as multilateral? Because it has signatures, or you can say participation of 100 plus countries, multiple number of countries. Multilateral means having 3 or more countries. There are 39 clauses, this you will have to remember. Okay, interested countries can, step number 1, sign the BEPS MLI. Second step, they can submit copy of those treaties which they want to be subjected to MLI. MLI will not amend the treaty. MLI and agreement both will go parallelly. So now every time you study any DTAA, you will have to study not only DTAA, you will have to study the relevant clauses of MLI also. Okay, still all these things are at a developmental stage. Treaties submitted will be called as covered tax agreement, but covered tax agreement, that does not mean MLI will automatically apply. There is something called compatibility test which is yet to be satisfied. Okay, this will apply 30 out of 39 clauses, only those clauses will apply to the given CTA for which both the contracting states have opted in. This is called compatibility condition or compatibility test. If either of the contracting states have not opted in for the given clause, then that particular clause will not apply to that CTA even if the other contracting state has opted in for that. In other words, three conditions to be cumulatively satisfied by both the countries. Both of them are to be signatories to BEPS MLI. Both of them should have submitted copy of their tax agreement to the OECD to be designated as covered tax agreement. This is called depositing of, not submission it is called depositing of agreement. Both the contracting states should have opted in for the given clause, then only given clause will be applicable. Okay, so some examples, suppose in the India-Australia DTAA. So whether India and Australia already have a DTAA, answer yes. First of all, they should have the DTAA, then only we can think of making it subject to MLI. Whether India and Australia are signatories to MLI, answer yes, both of them are signatories. Whether India has notified its DTAA or submitted its DTAA or deposited its DTAA with Australia as covered tax agreement in its MLI deposit note, answer yes. India has deposited it to be designated as covered tax agreement. Whether Australia has also notified, answer Australia has also submitted copy of India-Australia agreement. Scope of provisions, the answer yes, MLI provisions will apply. Scope provisions match. Matching means compatibility test is matched or is fulfilled. Means both of them have opted for a particular clause. Okay. Now, don't you think that everything would be wasted if both the countries end up selecting different clauses? Answer, that will rarely happen. Very rarely it will happen. Reason being very simple, that both the countries would have already communicated with each other over the phone. They would have already predetermined that which clauses they want to opt in, and they would have intimated their other partner, treaty partner, and treaty partner would have also given his consent. Overall, on phone, verbally, both the countries would have already pre-decided. Then only they will submit their treaty, and then only matter will proceed further. Another example, these two are given in module. India and Mauritius DTAA is a CTA under MLI or not? Indo-Mauritius. So, do India and Mauritius have already a treaty? Answer yes. Whether India and Mauritius are signatories to MLI? Answer yes. Both of them are signatories. But has India notified its DTAA, submitted its DTAA? Answer yes, India has Indo-Mauritius treaty, but Mauritius has not. Whether Mauritius has notified? Answer no, Mauritius has not notified. Perhaps because of reason that this BEPS MLI started in 2016 December, and India amended its agreement by signing a protocol with Mauritius in November 2016. India had just already amended, so now it was practically useless to submit the copy to OECD. India-Mauritius MLI will not apply because compatibility test is not matched. Maybe because in the year 2016, DTAA between the two was just modified by Modi government. The name only is Modi, so modified. Okay, what India has done? So, India has worked on an equal footing on the finalization of the text of multilateral convention, which started in 2015, ended in 2016. So, India had been a part of this group from the beginning to discuss about what clauses to be kept in the MLI. That's it. With that, the revision of this chapter comes to an end. Wish you all very good luck. Thank you very much. See you in the next video with some other chapter.